All right, we are back here on the Just End the Suffering podcast, doing what's become an annual tradition here, breaking down week one with the host of the Sharp Cheddar podcast. Joe D'Aloisio is here. Joe, how are you?
Mike, I am doing very well as always. Thank you for having me on. Excited to be back on the Just End the Suffering podcast.
I am too. I gotta say, putting football back is good, especially since our baseball team is basically just, gone flushed our season down the toilet down the stretch here. And I gotta say, week one, the games, I feel like every window had so much fun action going on. There was like not really a dull moment here, except for maybe part of the 1 o'clock window.
No, yeah. I mean, you look across the board down the score line of all the week one games. I thought there was a lot of really good football, which usually doesn't happen. I think the one thing that stood out the most to me, how much points were scored pretty much across the board. There were only a few games that didn't surpass that 25 plus point mark, but I feel like almost every game felt like there was high scoring. There was a lot of action, a lot of back and forth, other than the really two big blowouts. Obviously, it's exciting, and it's great that football is back. You feel the energy. It's also a change of pace now, seeing people in the stadium cheering. So feels almost back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at my fantasy football league. I'm checking the box scores here. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of points in the league this week. I don't usually have that happen in week one.
Yeah, it usually doesn't. I mean, not that anyone cares about my fantasy team, but I know in one of my leagues, I ended up being the highest scorer in week one, which doesn't happen often. I'll be honest. But yeah, a lot of points, a lot of action, and it's just good that football's back.
It absolutely is. I mean, it started out with a bang, right? Where we had that opening night classic between the Buccaneers and the Cowboys. Dallas plays much better than I thought they would in this game. But again, the kicker had some issues. They chose not to run the ball. Tampa picks up a big win there. What do you think about that opening night game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that set the tone for the NFL in the season that we can expect. And there couldn't have really been a better game, honestly. And I think, no matter what game is out there on that opening night, people are going to watch. But the fact that it was that exciting, that much action, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, it really lived up to the hype. And I'll be honest, I got to give a lot of credit to the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I had a lot of concerns with the Cowboys coming in, especially because of Dak's health, the surgery that he had coming back, and Mike McCarthy and company let him air it out a lot. I was surprised that he almost threw the ball 60 times in the first game back, but he looked really, really good. And if they could figure something out with that run game, I mean, this could be a potential team that not a lot of people probably had much faith in going into the season.
Yeah, it's also one thing I think about. I give the coaching staff credit, including Kellen Moore, the opposite coordinator. They don't have Zach Martin because he tested positive for COVID. He couldn't play in the game. They said, you know what, like, why bother running here? We're not going to, have much success against that Tampa Bay front without our best linemen. Let's, load up on the throw and use Zeke as a decoy. It worked. They almost won the game.
I totally get that. My one concern, though, is like, letting your franchise quarterback go out there post injury and, throw it almost 60 times and put him in danger so quickly into the season. That was my one concern with him throwing so much. But again, I thought Dak looked really, really good. And on the flip side for Tampa, I mean, when is any team going to learn not to give Tom Brady some time on the clock? Like literally, when are they going to learn?
Yeah, they never will.
I don't think so. At this point, I'm convinced they won't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say all the fun football that happens weekend, it always, again, goes back to our local teams here in New York. Feels like they're playing a different sport than the rest of the league because the games that we got in New York teams are just so bad, so uncompetitive. They both lost. The Jets had a lot of injury woes. Giants just underachieving in general. Like, which team do you think had the worst week one?
I think the New York Giants had the worst week one. I think they just looked bad on both sides of the ball. And this is a huge year for Daniel Jones. And he needs to figure out how to protect the football. He has way too many fumbles. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I heard a ridiculous stat that essentially said like he has 30 fumbles. He has more fumbles than starts.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But not only does Daniel Jones need to figure it out, I think Joe Judge, Jason Garrett, and company need to put him in better situations. I thought on Sunday, the play calling at times didn't help him out whatsoever. It obviously doesn't help that the offensive line stinks. They had a ton of issues attempting to run the ball. if I had to pick it, definitely the Giants had a worse week in terms of the locals.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because again, the expectations is so much higher for the Giants. And the thing that would concern me most on the Giant face, not even the offense, the fact that their defense let Teddy Bridgewater, Carolina was basically ready to throw overboard the second season ended last year, just go up and down the field and do whatever he wanted. That would be concerning me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both sides of the ball, deserve the criticism there. And like you said, the expectations a little bit higher for the New York Giants, and to come out like that against, a Broncos team that is a good team. Okay, I'm not going to say they're a great team or a very good team, a good team, middle of the pack team. In front of their home fans, you would have thought they would have came out a little bit better. The one saving grace I would say is you did see Daniel Jones and Kenny Galladay get it going in that second half, and if that chemistry could build, that could play a tremendous role for their season success. But the bottom line is he needs to protect the ball, and they need to protect him. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to be a long year for the New York Giants.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, you're here. You're the Packer guy. I know I have to go here. And
Come on, you have to? Do you really have to?
Yeah, there's the most shocking result on the board week one. Let's say, what the hell happened to the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, where do you want to start?
Yeah.
Where do you want to start, honestly? The offense was horrendous. Aaron Rodgers didn't look good. What made Aaron Rodgers really good last season was his accuracy and his decisiveness, right? He saw something, he got the ball out of his hands right away. In week one, he was very inaccurate, very indecisive. Now, granted, last season, the offensive line, so much better throughout the regular season. He already had some offensive line issues week one against the Saints. Specifically, you have David Bakhtiari. He's out. You have two rookies starting inside. There's going to be a big adjustment period. There's going to be a big adjustment period for this team. I thought going into this game that the offense shouldn't have a problem. And clearly that wasn't the case. I think it probably has something to do with none of the starters playing a single snap in preseason. And this is the first time they're all out there together playing real football since they lost against the Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game. On the flip side, on the defensive side of things, Kevin King still stinks. That's not a surprise. The bigger surprise is that Green Bay brought him back, but he looked terrible. The team wasn't able to get pressure. I know this was Joe Barry's first game as a defensive coordinator. I don't know. You can't start pointing fingers. You can't start the blame game just yet. It's 1 week, and the most important thing that people need to realize, and people love doing, is overreacting after week one, right? Everyone has an overreaction. It's week one. There's no reason to panic. If it's 4, 5, 6 weeks from now and this situation is still very imminent and nothing has changed, that's when I'm going to start to worry. But the fact of the matter is the defense, all they really did was change defensive coordinators, and they replaced Christian Kirksey with Devondre Campbell. Okay, those are everything else is identical. So begs, I pose the question, is it the player personnel or is it really the coaching that's the problem? And again, we can't judge the coaching because Joe Barry, it's literally his first game. So you can't really expect much change on that defensive side. The one thing that, you should be very disappointed about is how the offense performed.
Yeah, I will say also for them, you got the nice, perfect homecoming spot with Detroit coming in on Monday Night Football on week 2. If that's not a double-digit win, something is wrong there.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Green Bay does not get by the Detroit Lions on Monday night at home, we have big issues there. We have big issues. And I mean, I said it on my podcast very briefly. The Lions aren't going to lay down for you. We saw them fight back against the 49ers in front of their home crowd. They're going to give the Packers hell. I mean, it's a divisional rival. They're going to go all out on this one. The good news for Green Bay, if you want to look at good news, under the Matt LaFleur era, the Packers are 6-0 post regular season loss, and they've beaten opponents with an average score of 33-19.
Yep.
All things go as planned. They should have no problem against the Detroit Lions. With that said, though, this will be a little bit more telling, and you're also going to have the other side of it, the overreactions again. If Green Bay wins 55-14, everyone's going to say, well, they're back. They're the best team, etc. Slow your roll. There's a lot of football left. I don't think we could really make a consensus of how this team is going to be until, week 5 or week 6 when we see some more consistency. And that goes with any team in the league.
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's go a couple other things I want to touch on from this week. Obviously, the big game of the week was obviously Chiefs Browns in Kansas City. The Browns jump out early. They had the mishap with the punter. The Chiefs come back to win. I thought this was a good performance from the Browns, and then they kind of gave it away at the end. So, what was your big takeaway from that game in terms of those two teams?
That's as as the listeners know, going into the season for our pick segment, I took the over for the Chiefs. And I said it's going to be tough because they start off against a really tough opponent in the Kansas City Chiefs. But when I'm scoreboard watching and checking into that game, I really thought, wow, the Browns are going to do it here. They're going to do it. And, they fell apart at the end. And I think when it comes with the Browns, all the pressure's on Baker Mayfield, who needs to be able to close out these games, needs to play his best football late, take that next progression in his career and close out games. Because if he doesn't close out those games, it may not be the same old Browns. They'll be a much better team, obviously, but that's the difference between, being a playoff team, being a really good playoff team, and then getting to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. And, as for the Chiefs, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill are just a cheat code. It's just not even fair. It's a video game-esque. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I want to go to the other AFC North team. I mentioned is the Steelers and the Bills. And this is a game that the Bills are heavily favoring this game. That's one I kind of looked at the line side. I'm like, the Steelers have a good defense. This game could be close. I didn't expect the Steelers to win outright here. And the block punt plays a big role in it. So what do you think about what we saw out of those two teams?
Yeah, I was really surprised with this result. I'm going to be honest with you, because I thought the Bills would come into this one riding off the momentum that they had last year. And similar to the Browns, I'll say and Baker Mayfield, I'll say the same thing about the Bills and Josh Allen. Like, you want to take that next step, you need to close out games. This is on you. I thought McDermott made it a little bit more difficult for Allen. There was a couple decisions to punt on 4th down rather than going for it, which, played a big role in the game. And I was surprised with the Steelers because, to be honest with you, yes, I know how solid that defense is, but I really thought offensively, Big Ben is kind of on the outskirts, on his way out. I wouldn't be surprised at the end of this year if this Steelers team ended up being right around 500, if not below 500. So I think the Bills, I think the Browns, they're going to just be fine as long as their quarterbacks continue to grow and finish out games.
Yeah, obviously the other dramatic takeaway from the week one, as I've noticed here, is that all 4 NFC West teams won in week 1, which I can't remember the last time a division did that, where all their teams picked up a win to start the season. And we talked about this for in the preseason, that this is the best division in football. They've done nothing to show you that it's not going to be that.
Yeah, that was a dominating week 1 performance for that division. Specifically, stock up for the Cardinals, who had an excellent win against the Tennessee Titans, and also the Rams. I mean, I think this Rams offense could be very, very special with a guy like Matt Stafford, who loves to throw the ball all over the field.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I will say the 49ers did give me a big scare. I took that was the lock of the week in week 1 for the knockout pool. And then they almost gave the thing up at the end. But that was...
Yeah. I know they held on at the end, and that's why I'm not too wow factor when it comes to the 49ers, because, I mean, they gave up a lot of points. And they let Detroit storm back in that game. Again, will they be a team that's there potentially towards the end of the season? Probably. But I was way more impressed with the Rams and specifically the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, for sure. And Seattle underrated too. They did a good job going to Indy and winning there. And again, I picked them last week on the podcast in the pick. I said, hey, Seattle's going east. They're one of the few teams going out the way you can trust to do the job.
Yeah, I was actually on the opposite side of that. I like the Colts in that matchup because, again, I don't think this is a Seattle team that we're used to seeing. I don't think they're as talented as years past, and maybe because it's a transition where it's more on an offensive-based team rather than a defensive-based team, but they did an excellent job against the Colts.
For sure. Let's go now. Some quick wrap-ups here. Who do you think had the best win in week 1?
I don't know. I think that's a tough one to really pick one team exactly because, we were just talking about the NFC West teams. I think Arizona looked really good against a Tennessee team. Rams, again, they took care of business against the Bears. I really liked what I saw out of the Bengals and went a week 1 overtime win with over the Minnesota Vikings. Joe Burrow comes back from the ACL injury. He plays well. Joe Mixon, he plays well. Jamar Chase, the rookie. I mean, that's an offense that I'm going to keep my eye out on all season long because there's so much young talent. That could be a really fun team to watch.
Yeah, I think one I'll throw out here also that's kind of floating under the radar here, but just how dominant the Eagles looked in Atlanta against the Falcons, also very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new era in Philly, and similar to that young offense, the Eagles have this pretty similar to what the Bengals have. I think the Bengals have a little bit more talent in that sense, but the Eagles are right there behind them. Actually, that game was going to lead into one of the biggest disappointments, to be honest with you.
You're going with Atlanta as the biggest disappointment week 1.
Yeah, I thought Atlanta and Green Bay. I mean, you gotta say it how it is. Although it pains me to admit it, but I think both of those teams are the biggest disappointments. Not Atlanta, not because they should be something better. I don't think Atlanta is that great of a team, but they just did not look good. They didn't look good. Matt Ryan didn't look good. This is a team that could, to me, be a bottom of the NFC South. And for the Packers, it was just a really, really bad start. Another team that I'll throw in there that I was surprised about, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
They looked awful.
They looked really bad. And more importantly, I thought it was a really good opportunity for Trevor Lawrence, first career start. You're going up against a Texans team that, like, nobody even could name 5 players on that roster right now other than Tyrod Taylor, right? Like, this is a roster of players that it's like an expansion team at this point all over again. And the fact that they couldn't do much was kind of surprising. And again, it goes back to that overreaction. Are the Texans going to win 10 games this year? No. Are the Jags going to be terrible? I don't think so, but I thought that week 1 they should have performed a little bit better.
Yeah, no offense to friend of the podcast, Jaguar fan Sandra Rosa. I was a bit happy that they lost the way they did in week 1 because I was getting so annoyed with the media last year saying Trevor Lawrence can't go with the Jets. You'll destroy his career. I'm like, what do you think is going to happen to him in Jacksonville?
I mean, I get that. I totally get where you're coming from with that. The Jets have some potential when it comes with Zach Wilson. And now it's, what were your thoughts on Zach Wilson in his debut?
I thought he did fine. I mean, he had some moments in the first half. The line did him no favors because he's running for his life the whole game, but he did a good job hanging in there. He made some big throws, but the thing I'm worried about, again, is the line. No, Beck didn't go for a while coming up here. It's like, I'm worried not going to be able to keep him upright. And if he's not on the field, he's not going to learn and get better.
And that's the thing. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the most talented quarterback in the NFL, but if you don't have anybody protecting you, it's going to be really tough to have a good afternoon or a good evening. So that's definitely number one. And similar to what you said, I thought Zach Wilson played overall okay. And I think early on you saw that nerves, you saw the happy feet, and then he really settled in as you got later into the game, which is a good sign. Do I think it's going to be a successful season? It depends what you label as successful. But I think you want to continue to see him grow week to week, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think the thing that I was encouraged by is obviously is that last year you could give me that game tape where they're down 16 at the half, they're getting destroyed on the line. This coaching staff last year, that's a 35-3 loss. This year they came all the way back and they were right in that game at the end. They had a chance to come back and steal it. Without a doubt,
and that's a huge difference, and that's very important. To see right off the bat, because if it would have been a 33-0 game or 35-0, whatever the score, then you're sitting there saying, "Yikes! Maybe this is the same old team with just some new toys."
Yeah. I also throw out one complaint that I had with the league. It sort of grinds my gears.
What do you got? I don't know where you're going with this at all, but I think I know where you're going with it, and I have a feeling I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, in that Jet Panther game, pregame here, we find out that the Panthers switched the numbers of 2 linebackers like 20 minutes before the game started. I'm like, you can't do that. You spent the whole week coaching film, like saying, oh, he's 56, he's 50. Now it's on their 4 and 7. Like, you can't do that the day of the game. That's bullshit.
So I agree with you. That is ridiculous, and that shouldn't have been allowed at all. I'll take it a step further. I hate the new number system in the NFL. I hate that a linebacker could have a single digit A running back could have a single digit. You essentially could have any number you want now. I get it in college, and I think it's in college football, we're just accustomed to it, so we take it in. It doesn't bother us. When I was watching Thursday night, the opening night against the Bucks and the Cowboys, seeing Micah Parsons wearing 11 or whatever number he is, I mean, it was just throwing me off, and that's something I don't think I could ever get used to in the NFL.
For me, I don't mind that because I get the logic behind it because, there's so many different sets of expanded rosters and you can't limit the position groups and numbers, but you can't let them change the numbers 20 minutes before the game. Like, that's bullshit when you're trying to prepare, especially a rookie quarterback trying to study the film. All of a sudden, this guy, he says, oh, I'm looking for the 50s. All of a sudden, he's number 4 popping up.
Well, I'm surprised the NFL allowed that because, I mean, that's the most logical response right there that, hey, we studied all week for number 50 and now he's number 4. Like, that potentially changes the game plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something I think they should not allow that. I think it should be like all number changes have to be in by Tuesday. That way you can say, okay, he's 4, not 50. Not they do it a half hour before the game starts.
It'll be interesting to see if that continues.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. I'm surprised that Belichick didn't come up with that first.
You are right. He is pretty sneaky.
Yeah. Also, I'll throw out for worst loss of week 1. I know we didn't get to them yet because that game was the last one of the week, but how Baltimore blew that game to the Raiders is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel bad for Baltimore in the way that they're starting their season with, who's playing running back, who's not playing running back, the injuries that they had. But to lose the way that they lost against John Gruden and company, I can only imagine the pain that that one feels.
Yeah, I'm happy about that one too because I have a friend who's not a big football guy. He started doing the knockout pool this year. He texted me on, I think, Thursday last week. He said, I'm going to take the Raiders league. I'm like, do not do that. Do something else. And he switched the pick. So he's still in the pool because of me.
All right. Well, luckily you were a good friend and said, hey, you may want to switch this.
Yeah, because he switched to the Rams. So he's now through to week 2.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's the type of person that has a lot of potential who could end up picking the most obscure game and getting through and still having the best teams late.
Yeah.
Be careful.
I know. He's not in my pool, though. So I'm happy about that. So.
All right. Good.
You're not competing for the same prizes.
That's important.
Yeah. And I think going ahead to week 2, I think looking ahead to the games this week, I feel like in the past, like week 1 is usually stacked and week 2 is kind of like, there's 1 or 2 good games, but there's a lot of interesting matchups in week 2.
What's your favorite matchup for week 2?
I think there's a couple I have my eye on here. I think Bills Dolphins in the AFC East, I think it's an underrated game. I think that's a very good concept. Obviously Sunday night with the Chiefs and the Ravens is gonna be a lot of fun. And I think Thursday, Giants have a massive game against Washington here. They have to win this game because they can't go 0-2 for the 8th time in 9 years.
No, that's a huge game. And, here's a Washington team that's definitely going to be hungry going into this game after losing week 1 against the LA Chargers. I think another good game is going to be 49ers Eagles. I think that really has the potential of a really good matchup to see where both of those teams stand. And I'm kind of curious to see it, can the Bengals move to 2-0?
Yeah.
Can the Bengals move to 2-0? Again, not marquee matchups, but, we have storylines in place after week 1.
That's a winnable game they have against the Bears too.
Absolutely. Very winnable. And the question comes, how much longer do the Bears wait to make that decision, that change at quarterback? But hey, I'll sit back and watch the Bears suffer. I can't talk that much trash because my team looked like trash week 1. So
yeah, and I think Cowboys Chargers also a week 2 matchup. That's gonna be, I think, a lot of firepower, a lot of offensive scoring in that game.
Yeah, you mentioned the Chiefs are ready for the Sunday night game, and then how do the Titans battle back? Do they battle back? They got a tough one against Seattle, so there are a lot of good matchups. Listen, you could put the 2 worst teams on, everyone's gonna watch. That's just the NFL. I'm a sucker for it. I think you're the same way. You put the 2 worst teams, it may be painful, but we're watching it.
Though to be fair, on Sunday night this week, I did not watch the Bear-Ram game because that game did not get my interest at all. And I'd seen plenty of football at that point.
Okay, well, I'll be honest. The reason why I wanted to see that, obviously wanted to see what the Bears look like as someone who watches the Packers, as a Packers fan. I want to see what else was in that division. And I want to see Stafford in that offense. And I was impressed.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens going forward. Joe, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, if you follow on social media, keep up with the Sharp Cheddar podcast.
Yeah, Mike. So you can follow me on Twitter at Joe__DALLOISIO. The latest Sharp Cheddar podcast was just released, my recap episode talking about, everything that pretty much went wrong in week 1 for Packers Saints. I'll have I'm hoping to have another episode later in the week previewing the Lions game, how this team bounces back, what we should look for, what's next. So, the podcast available on all podcast platforms. Just search Sharp Cheddar Podcast.
Yeah, I give you credit. You usually get 2 a week out during the football season. That's not an easy pace to maintain.
No, it definitely isn't. It's definitely tougher this year, I'll be honest with you. And I'm going to try to stay as consistent as possible with at least, beginning and end of the week. I got to bring my picks at the end of the week. I know people only listen to the podcast for my terrible picks. I'm joking. I did have a bad week. I went 1-2.
Yeah, so did I. One of my picks was your Packers, so unfortunately they screwed me over.
I actually went against your Jets, so my Panthers were my lone winner, and then the Colts did me dirty, and so did the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I took 2 AFC South teams. What's wrong with me?
I don't know, Joe. Thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it.
Mike, pleasure as always.